Hi, it's Paula. This is the Common Book Show. I'm here with Richard and Nessa and Jason and, of course, my son Tom on drums. And I'm going to read a Sufi story because I actually was initiated as a Sufi a long while ago by Pir Vilat before he died. I mean, after he died, it would have been harder.
How did you get initiated?
I went to see Pir Vilat.
And I don't know like a process, or they do something.
He gives you a mantra, and then So this is my story: the rogue, the sheep, and the villagers. Once there was a rogue who was caught by the people of the village. They tied him to a tree to contemplate the suffering which they were going to inflict on him, and went away, having decided to throw him into the sea that evening, after they had finished their day's work. But a shepherd who was not very intelligent came along and asked the clever rogue why he was tied up like that. "Ah," said the rogue, "some men have put me here because I will not accept their money." "Why do they want to give it to you, and why will you not take it?" asked the astounded shepherd. "Because I am a contemplative, and they want to corrupt me," said the rogue. "They are godless men." The shepherd suggested that he should take the rogue's place, and advised the rogue to run away and put himself out of reach of the godless ones. So they changed places. The citizens returned after nightfall, put a sack over the shepherd's head, tied him up, and threw him into the sea. The next morning, they were amazed to see the rogue coming into the village with a flock of sheep. "Where have you been, and where did you get those animals?" they asked him. The rogue said, "In the sea, there are kindly spirits who reward all who jump in and drown in this manner." In almost less time than it takes to tell, the people rushed to the seashore and jumped in. That was how the rogue took over the village.
Ooh, reminds me of Trump. He's not taking a salary, but he's going to have a military parade.
Yeah, so I don't know. I like.
That's great.
I love Sufi stories.
Do you know when that was?
Probably the 15th century.
Okay, because the Grimm brothers had one of their fairy tales so that's from the 1700s. So the 18th century was. I forgot what the woman, she's in her cottage, ramshackle, she's poor, of course. And she finds something magic that allows her to make wishes. And what she says is, "I want to be richer than the king," and she's in this opulent palace. "I want to be richer than the Pope. I want to be richer than the emperor. I want to be richer than God." And she finds herself back in her cottage.
Oh. Yeah, that sounds.
How is that richer than God?
I wasn't talking to you because I know you'd have something snarky to say that wouldn't
I
really go anywhere.
It, so explain.
Yeah,
the audience might not understand.
She's asking for clarification.
The clarification is that it's not material goods.
James.
Yeah, it's not material goods. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I was thinking about the literal definition of monetary wealth. When you were saying that.
No.
No, I said richer, and so that's what it is. That
when I think richer, I think like monetary wealth.
Brian, it's Jason's fault.
What you're saying is other kinds of value other than monetary. Okay, you clarified it.
It's like I went out to lunch with the Dalai Lama. We went to a baseball game.
Jason will plug you in.
Yeah, you did. Well, who did you go see? Was it the Mets or the Yankees?
And I asked him how he wanted a hot dog, and he said, "Make me one with everything."
I sent you a text.
But what is everything? Is everything chili or sauerkraut or mustard?
You kind of missed it.
Onions.
Oh,
but you got to tell me what everything consists of on the hot dog.
When they told
that's a nice shot there. I like the back of James'
that
shirt. That's like really artistic. It's sort of like
that. The Dalai Lama didn't get the joke because it's all comedy is all language,
Okay.
Huh?
Thank you.
Comedy is all language, so the Dalai Lama didn't get that joke because what it is it deals with, in English, two different things, and it doesn't make sense when you translate it into
Burmese.
No, he's from Tibet, but I don't know if they speak Chinese there or.
Ask Tom where he wants Lauren to sit.
Hey, we shouldn't be doing this during the show. We
Okay.
should put a pause.
All right. So So later in the show, I would like to talk about this political issue.
Which political issue?
I talked to a young woman in New York about something that she was a political activist, and she was talking about this thing, and I found it appalling, and I thought you too would find it appalling. So I figured we would talk about that sometime later in the show. It's
Fine with me.
Yeah, I usually don't do political stuff, but she was really compelling, and
How old?
she was probably in her early 20s.
Okay. Youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah, she was. Well, no, this. Okay, let's talk about it now. I'll talk
Yeah,
about
let's
it
talk
now.
about it now since you brought it
Okay,
up.
so this is the thing. There are healthcare workers now because they're trying to keep people out of nursing homes, so they're trying to keep people in their homes. So,
They are?
So right.
Really?
So what they do
I thought
is
the nursing home was a big industry.
no. What they do is they have a nurse that comes in,
And I'm a nurse.
and in New York, there's a 24-hour shift that you go in and you are there for 24 hours.
Sounds like the factory.
Okay, these jobs are mostly taken by immigrant women, and these immigrant women are desperate for work, so they're doing this job. Mm-hmm. Do you know how many hours they get paid for being there for? And there's no law against a 24-hour shift in this particular industry. Do you know how many hours they get paid for that 24-hour shift?
24?
13.
Why?
More than I thought.
$13?
I thought it'd be 18.
13 hours they get paid for out of 24. What they're trying to do is outlaw the 24-hour shift because they're saying that they're only working, they're sleeping. They're saying they're sleeping the rest of the time. Well, what if that person needs care during the night, during the middle of the night? They're trying to outlaw the 24-hour shift
So are they
and
really-
make it 2 14-hour shifts. But they don't want to do that because then they'd have to pay two people 13 hours of salary.
Are they allowed to sleep for that 10 hours if they can?
They're just supposed to be there, and so they're saying that
Wow.
for 24. She told me, she says, in Buffalo they don't do that. First of all, in Buffalo
Not yet.
it tends to be a job that young white women take to these caregivers in houses, or it's a mix.
Don't worry, innovations and capitalism have a way of coming here eventually.
But the thing is, in Buffalo, the 24-hour shift is illegal. So they have two 14-hour shifts, or two 12-hour, 24 hours, or two 12-hour shifts, and the person has to get paid for 11 hours. Each person gets paid for 11 hours. So that's a total of 22 hours.
How do you know it's not legal here, that they just didn't implement it yet,
Well,
but it could be legal here?
It may be legal here, but they don't do it here. They don't do the 24 hours.
yet.
They don't do the 24-hour shift. This is so corporate greed that I wanted to vomit, because these people are. She said there's no quality of life for the worker. There's no. I mean, your breaks. You're taking your breaks. You can't even leave because you're taking care of this person who's in need of care.
Dems the brakes.
And 24 hours of your life is spent in this house with this person, and you only get paid for 13.
Well, I have something not so egregious,
Wow.
but I have a comparison. That when I worked on the ambulance 30 years ago with LaSalle Ambulance, because now Doug Baker, who started, he's dead, and it sold a couple of times.
Yeah.
But at LaSalle, if you worked 12 hours, they just calculated that you had a half-hour break in there. So you could say, I didn't get a break to eat.
It's legally you needed. Yeah.
But if you worked 24, they would take an hour and a half out as if it was 3/8, unless you said to them, I didn't get a break. But like East Aurora would be where people would work 24s. But
yeah.
another thing, in the city, the reason why they can do it in the city is Buffalo Fire does 10 and 14-hour shifts. They're from 7 to 5 and then 5 to 7 a.m., and they alternate the way it goes. But out more rural areas, the firefighters will work 24 hours. I worked 24-hour shifts for 8 years, and I'm still alive. I almost died.
Did you get paid for 13 of those?
No, I got paid for the whole time.
See, that's
the
the
thing.
difference.
That's the thing. You couldn't functionally work as a firefighter in the city for 24 hours.
Right. Right, but these are people who are being exploited. You know, this girl, she was so compelling. I sat there and I talked to her for about a half an hour.
Is
and
Tom still there?
What they're really trying to do is not to change that 13-hour pay scale thing. They want to change it so they can't have a 24-hour shift. They want 12-hour shifts so they get paid for 11. And
It's nice to want.
Right, but they're being exploited because it's all these immigrant women from other countries who are desperate for work.
Anyway.
But when you say immigrant, is that like Filipinos or
what,
Jamaicans
China?
or
All different kinds of women.
Somalia,
Chinese women,
Mexican
women, people from Haiti, of course, people from Jamaica. All these women who are coming in there, and they are, you know, she specifically said women of color. So it's a job that is primarily done in New York City by women of color who are from other countries and who don't have any other marketable skills, you know. So
May I say that when my wife was a nurse, the rule that they had was that you could work 2 8-hour shifts back to back. So basically they could do 16 hours and get paid for 14.
yeah, the labor law says, and that's why even if you didn't get your break, that's why they put it. The labor laws say that if you work a certain number of hours, you have to have a half an hour break. But if you work an 8-hour shift, you have to have 1 half an hour and 2 15-minute breaks. There's labor laws that they can't get around, so they're going to screw you out of the money that you worked through and that's why I never skipped my breaks or my lunch because I knew. Hi. Yes, how are you? Good. Do we have a place?
Tom will set her up
We have a
somewhere.
visitor.
Okay.
We need to turn Brian and James up a little bit in the mix.
Okay, so Brian,
James is a bit low. Okay, let's keep talking so the viewers don't.
All right,
go
so
away.
yeah, this is not. So anyway, I was. In fact, I told her. I said I didn't tell her I was doing a podcast because that always sounds so. That always sounds so like I do a podcast. I didn't say that out loud at all, but I said I'm going to tell my friend Richard about this because I think he'll find this interesting.
I do indeed.
Yeah.
Can you plug Lauren in?
Put it on.
Paula, can you plug her in?
Oh, sure, I can plug this in. All
color
right.
coded for your pleasure?
Does it vibrate? That's what I need to know.
It's no.
Okay, Lauren is
good.
plugged into white.
You're plugged into white. And for
That's
some
like all kinds
reason,
of
mine
noise.
sounds louder now that I plugged her in, so I'm not sure why. But
I think it would be better if there was just like a random code number applied to it. You take the colors off and make it like one is 7 and the other is 12, and then the next one is 6, and then the next one is 384, just to make it more fun so you don't know where it is.
why would you complicate her lifestyle?
Are you in?
Because I just said that.
That's anarchy right
That's
there.
right. That's right. So,
No, it's precision.
Thunder
All right.
precision.
So, I mean, if you want this, you can have this. I don't know if you have
I
any
mean,
interest
what
in
is the
keeping
means
it.
of
I
it?
have
Like,
any need for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't that...
Oh, that was flyers people were
that was
passing out?
that was the flyer that she passed out. Yeah, it's Chinese on the back.
so how did you encounter this
Wow,
woman?
thank you.
She was there were people on the street handing out flyers, and Greg and I had sat on a bench because we were done walking for a few minutes, and she kind of walked up to us, and she was as tall as I was sitting down, so we were face to face, and we had this conversation, and she was really smart, intelligent, engaging, and I talked to her for half an hour.
Smart and intelligent. She was pretty and beautiful too. No, that's smart and intelligent are
Well, I think there are two different things, really. She had
We need some noise.
I guess what I meant by intelligent was more knowledgeable. I meant knowledgeable more than intelligent.
And doesn't smart mean that too?
Smart? No, smart is just it's your innate ability to process information.
Okay, that's a new one by me. Okay.
Yeah, I think smart doesn't have. You can be smart and not have any
Smart
knowledge.
is not dumb.
Hey, you sound like the arguments we used to have One of the big ones with my English teachers was conceit and arrogance are not the same. Because
True.
arrogance delivers.
Arrogance can also be justified. Well, conceit
I like
isn't
that.
always justifiable. but
It ain't bragging if
arrogance-
it's true.
if you're good at something, like you're a great record producer on the level of someone like Alan Parsons, sure, you can be arrogant because you've earned that arrogance.
Yeah, but that's where our religious training comes in to play, because we are
Which
told,
religion?
well, Christianity. I mean, we are told that it's a sin to brag about. You're supposed to never say. And I found that when I understood what that meant, it meant that it creates a problem with your self-esteem. The first time I went to a bar mitzvah, and I watched that kid go to the front of the temple and stand up there and chant in a Hebrew by himself, a 12-year-old, and everybody was there to listen to him. I thought that's the difference between Judaism and Christianity.
That's just
We
one.
all do, right, it's one of them, but we all do everything in a group like sheep. We make our communion together. The only thing we do separately
Groupthink,
is
like
baptism
MAGA.
And marriage.
and marriage. So we do, but most, and death.
Yeah, and funerals, yeah.
So the thing is, they were honoring this one person, and then he got a sense of self-esteem for doing this really
Is it
difficult
geniality or is it
thing.
vanity?
Sin is a man-made
I don't think
concept.
it's- I
Sin
don't
doesn't
think it's
really
vanity.
exist except in people's minds. If you believe in a sky daddy, you might think there's sin, but prove that the sky daddy exists. Sin is a man-made concept, really, if you think about it.
Well,
Well, it is, and I mean it is, but there.
I
are
mean, you can have
some-
crime and violations and stuff. That's
No,
different, but
that's a
sin,
man-made. No, crime and violations are a man-made thing
They are too, but
Yeah,
like they're not
but-
the same as sin. Sin implies a divinity involved in it.
Okay, we got your point.
Sin is just missing the mark.
Well, the thing is, aren't there human being things like do not kill someone? I mean, unless you're forced into
Do not
it.
Or you need some
murder.
meat.
There's a
The-
difference.
Do not take their stuff.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Because
Well-
it's not your stuff. Do not. There's certain things that.
Stuff. Then there's the whole concept of ownership of things.
Yeah, that's true. And not every culture has ownership. You're right about that.
And the original Hebrew was not "do not kill," "thou shalt not kill," is "thou shalt not slay," and they differentiated the kill and the slay, like
how-
homicide versus murder.
So slay was murder, and
Yeah, homicide is somebody gets killed. Murder is somebody planned to kill them.
yeah.
So like it's the
You
thing.
might want to use manslaughter instead.
No,
Yeah.
no. Manslaughter is not malice aforethought. That's a whole difference.
That was my point.
That Don King spent years for second-degree manslaughter in Cleveland. He beat a guy to death with a baseball bat. He didn't plan to go out and kill him. That's why he got the manslaughter ding. Or like criminally negligent homicide. You were being a doofus,
Yeah, and
you were joyriding and you hit somebody because you
Yeah.
went over the curb.
Yeah. I get the distinction between those, but for me, I think that there are some. All right, you know my views on cannibalism. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
It's meat. Meat is meat.
Well, the thing is,
Arby's
the
has
thing
the
is-
meat, so why don't they have that one?
I don't think there's any society, although there were some ancient societies where they would kill people ritualistically, but so I guess I'm wrong about that. I'll have to regroup on this one. So if you're an Aztec and you take somebody up to the top of the pyramid
Yeah.
and you cut off their head to appease a god,
Rip their heart out.
that's
what you
okay.
did.
No, that's
with
Molo Ram.
the Aztecs. It's okay with them.
I think they
because
chopped off heads.
It's
that was a.
yeah,
no, they did. The Aztecs took the heads off.
and they actually tore the.
I know they took the heart.
They
yeah.
opened up the chest cavity and they held up the heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, those kinds of. So I guess there isn't really a human norm.
Well, I'd like to discuss that. You would have to know people who were in the Aztec culture and find out.
Right. You have to go back in time and
Right.
talk to
No,
them.
and you'd have to find out what the killing of those people did to the people who did the killing. And I just would like to invoke the Dostoevsky story, Crime and Punishment.
Mm-hmm.
A person commits a murder.
Right.
Then the whole rest of that's in like the first 3 chapters.
Yes.
The whole rest of the novel is what that does to them psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
So what anyone who commits a murder in any culture, you got to find out what it does to them psychologically.
But what about if it's considered, if it is not considered a bad thing? You're doing something for the whole community. You're chopping this guy's head off for the whole community, so the community will flourish,
Yes.
and the crops will come up, and the rain will fall, and everything is going to be good across the board. So you feel like you've done a service. You can't take our mindset from the culture we're in now and transplant it into something like that, because there's even in Eastern Europe, the mindset of people 2,000 years ago, we couldn't identify with.
Mm-hmm.
It was okay. That's all they did. They marched into other people's towns and took their shit. That's what they did for a living.
Well, do you think that there were no people from 2,000 years ago who did these what we call crimes?
Yeah.
Who didn't feel the consequences? Like, there's a thing about human beings, like, I know that it's justified, but is it really doing my mind any good?
If it's somebody
This
that
is
you
the
cared
worst thing.
about.
Take, for example, the Spartans.
Yeah.
They had a custom.
Yeah.
So everybody agreed to it.
Right.
When your baby is 1 year old, take them and leave them in the mountains overnight. If they survive, they're worthy of being a Spartan. Don't you think that there were mothers who said, this is wrong?
Mm-hmm.
I do.
The other thing about the women of the Spartans that is that they would criticize and chastise their sons if they were anything except tough. They would tell them they didn't love them, and they would cast them out if they were not behaving in the way that they felt was right for a male child. So
Still that way.
these women, it's a brainwashing process. It's called culture is a brainwashing process that we've all gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And so in their culture, do I feel that I could leave a child of mine out in the wilderness? No, I couldn't do it.
I bet there were a lot of mothers who didn't do it, but said they did. That's what I think happened.
I would think that the father is the one who brought him out.
And I don't know if we can fathom the difference in the way people thought. I know we're all humans. We're humans.
True.
And yes, okay. So even the Neanderthal, when they buried their dead, they buried them with grave goods, which means that they had a sense that they were going to take this stuff with them to wherever they were going. For a long time, we believed that they did not do that. And then we found some grave goods at Neanderthal sites, and they were, it looked like they were buried with care. They were buried with jewelry, and they were buried with tools, and they even found flowers with the bones. I mean, it was obviously deteriorated, but they found the pollen from the flowers in these grave sites.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, people do have that sense of connection. That's normal. I mean, I think it's even normal. I had a pigeon that used to visit me in New York, and there were 2 of them. And when the female pigeon died, the male pigeon mourned for a year.
Mm.
It was awful to watch.
Did his feathers turn black?
No. So the thing
Bummer.
is, the thing is, I think there is something to be said for that humanity that we all share.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that culture is really a very strong tool for manipulating our minds.
I think that manipulating is kind of strong because the culture just is. And so as it morphs, wait.
Yeah, okay.
Don't interrupt me, because you don't interrupt Richard, because he hates it.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, that the culture, how it changes. 60 years ago, everybody smoked.
Yeah.
And you were black, you were gay, you were a woman, you didn't count.
Yeah.
And so that's why culture modifies.
No, it does. It does modify. But But the thing is, some of the deeply embedded things in our culture about not having sexual intercourse with close relatives, or trying not to, I guess, because some people do, or not eating your dead, or not killing your parents or your children is considered a worse crime than killing your neighbor. Those kind of things are made up, kind of.
Well, the one thing that I don't think is made up, it's more instinctual, is not having relations with your relatives.
Except that
That's because of probably genetics and things are going to go wrong.
Exactly, but in Egypt, it was not unusual for a brother and sister to marry.
Did you ever see the rendition of what Tutankhamun looked like?
I know.
The Habsburg jaw.
But they did it because, and even in Europe they have cousins.
That king with that weird face, the Habsburg jaw. Remember that king?
Yeah,
he was like a real.
and they just keep
But
getting
that comes
bigger
from
and bigger.
repeated-
Unhealthy.
Yeah,
Well,
it
that
does.
was repeated incest.
But-
All you need is one, because all I got is one word for you: hemophilia.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
that's
I know.
right.
That's one of the
King Tut
results.
had that,
Did
yeah.
you know there was hemophilia in my family, and it died out because all the men, there were no men, children.
Well, because it's a recessive disease, so you got to
Yeah,
get two
the
together. And when you're
inferior
screwing your
Y
sister,
chromosome.
Yeah.
when you're screwing it's on the X chromosome.
It is?
Yeah.
Is that-
Then
Because
how come it transmits through male
males.
lineage, as she says?
Because that's the determining of male, but you get the whole genome. Mm-hmm. You
Yeah.
get the whole genome, and
But
it's the
you would
X.
think it would also go to the females too if it's X based, wouldn't it? Because both have X, XY, and XX.
I'd have to look it up again.
Yeah.
So that because it's virtually all male are the.
Do you think if it's a male attributed trait, it would have to go with the male associated?
Yeah.
strand?
Well, no, I'd have to review that. So,
Yeah, okay.
but I'm just saying hemophilia, incest.
Right, but the thing is there in some of these stories that I'm reading in Herodotus, they are marrying there was one instance where the king married his daughter.
Well,
I mean, it's not so much that you would think that it was inborn in us. It's just what we do
in
now.
the Christian Bible, in the Old Testament, Moses married Jochebed, who was his aunt. And that was written from Onan was told to impregnate his brother's wife, but refused to, and he spilled his seed on the ground. That's why
Yeah.
an old term for male masturbation is onanism. He spilled his seed
I've
on the
never
ground.
heard that before.
Yeah,
but-
you never heard that?
No.
Yeah, and that's
Onanism.
from where it came
I've
from,
heard it a
Onan,
lot.
because he refused to lay with his sister-in-law.
Because that was the rule back then. If your brother died before the wife had any kids, you were supposed to impregnate her, and then that child would
Throw a bag on her head and do the deed.
would carry on that line.
And so but Onan refused to do that.
Yeah, and was there a reason for that? I don't remember that.
He
story.
preferred blokes, that's why.
Well, the Greeks did welcome
Greeks.
homosexuality, and the Romans tolerated it.
Well,
and then,
it was a thing. It was young. It was kind of a progression from youth into. For the girls as well, the girls and the guys, they would kind of diddle with each other until they got old enough to get married and have kids.
Well, like that was 13 for the girls, and the guys, they're hormonal, and they're 15 years old with a perpetual erection. I mean, they're going to screw whatever they
A
can.
priapism.
Well, you can't screw with the priapism because it's a corpus
That's a song title.
Well, it's a reality too because it's
Oh
the
my God,
corpora
look at all these notes.
cavernosa,
I
not the
can't keep up.
spongiosa. So that it's not a real. The priapistic erection is not. You can't screw with it.
His sister was ugly. Thank you, Brian. I just
That's why I said
read
put a
that
bag
one.
on her head and do the deed.
Well, the thing
Get
is,
drunk.
Because it had to do with the royal lineage, and they didn't want to give up any power or money or anything like that, and so they were always inbreeding.
Do you know what's the best sobriquet that I can think of? Not Pepin the Short, but Louis the Fat.
Oh, is that an actual?
Yeah, Louis the Fat was a French
Sounds like
guy
a
from
rapper.
about 1,200 years ago. Because there was like Richard the
wow.
Lionhearted, but also if you had a disparaging sobriquet, that could also apply.
Yeah.
Like Larry the Coward.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't
Donnie
know.
Bone Spurs.
I don't know as much about the history of the kingships and stuff like that. I like the ancient history. I like the stuff where the people are just so freaking weird. They're just so weird that they're so different from us, and I just wish I could just. Okay, I'd probably want to go back as a man, but I would go. I would go back there, and I would just stand there and just hang out and absorb all the stuff that was going on, because it was they were so the gods that they believed in, and the superstitions, and I just find it fascinating.
Well, we still have gods and superstitions now.
Fascinating like a Monet painting, or fascinating like a car accident? Or like
like a Monet painting of a car accident.
Because the comparison I make is people with the personality disorders. Because the first time you see them, it's amazing, but then you're ready for the movie to be over.
Oh,
so the next time you see them, they work on your last nerve, because that's why it's a personality disorder.
Well, that's what Greg's always saying. He says there's such a thing as too interesting. So we're on the okay. We really just went crazy. Okay, so. I guess
though.
Because I wasn't here last week and I had a lot of stuff to say, but let's go on to something that you've got on your list. I'm sure you've got list stuff. You guys had a show last week? I didn't watch it yet.
Everybody died at the end.
Oh, okay, good.
So you don't have to watch it now.
So do you have something on your list that you want to talk
He
about?
rose from the dead like Jesus?
Tops on my list. Lauren, what do you think about this subject we're discussing, that inside the human mind, there is... You don't want to talk?
The human mind. Yeah, okay. Inside the human mind, yeah.
Okay. Inside the human mind, is there something, regardless of what culture you're born into, that knows a sense of right and wrong?
Oh, that's a good way of putting it.
It's a kind of question we're dancing around here.
Yeah.
Concept of right and wrong seems to alter with alterations in society, so it's a societal influence.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't think it's internal to the human mind then?
Yeah,
More of a societal
I
influence.
think we have some. I do feel that we're blank pages. We're born blank pages.
Right, because if what we call antisocial, well, if everybody's antisocial, nobody is, because that's just what you do.
Yeah.
That's just what you do.
Okay, well, here's a counter argument.
Okay.
Right now, the Israeli army is occupying Gaza.
Yes.
All right, doing things like people come for the food trucks, right? If they're too unruly, they just start shooting. The army, the Israeli army, has people in it who get sent to Gaza, and the next day they go to their supervisor, I can't be here. I can't be here. I can't handle this. I can't do this. And so what they do, they send them back to Israel. You know, you can serve in the army and still stay in the state of Israel. You don't have to go to Gaza. So it does happen where people just have the sense of what's wrong inside, and you can't change that regardless of the culture.
Because because of the times we live in, we know that it's wrong to kill without a reason.
That happened with the SS too.
You
A lot
have
of
to
people
happened
couldn't
with the
stand
Nazis.
the SS.
But
It's the guy that wasn't going
You have
like
to
this
consider-
in the picture.
Thank you.
On the flip side, though, hold your thought, because I just looked at this today, because I watched that documentary, Darkness from the Light, the one about Jerry Lewis's movie about the clown who cried. Mm-hmm. The pieces I saw, they were crap. Jerry Lewis tried to make a dramatic movie, and the idea was he's a clown that gets sent to a concentration camp. They find out he's a clown, and they make him entertain the children on their way to the gas chamber.
Wow.
But the movie itself,
my
it's not that it was
God.
lost.
It was
It was
amazing.
great.
He got talked out of releasing it.
Well, it's also...
Can you see it anywhere? Is it like on...
You can't. He said it would be a certain number of years after he died, people could see it.
And in 2024...
Did it say how many years after he died people could see it?
It would be 2024.
Oh,
Well,
That was the thing. That was the year, because he would have...
and it still didn't get released?
No, it's in the Library of Congress, but it's an unfinished copy. It's unedited and it's unfinished. It was never finished because the distributing house, the producers, went out of business, and there was a bunch of fighting. And this was 1972. This is 50 years ago. It was, they shot in Sweden and in were they in Czech Republic or in Poland, but or in Germany. Sorry, they were in Germany, but it wasn't a good movie. And
How do you know it didn't get finished?
Yeah, I mean, you never saw
the
it.
scenes that I saw, I'm telling you.
The scenes you saw weren't good. Okay.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of
Thank
scenes.
you.
It was 2 hours
The
long.
scenes you saw weren't
The
good.
45 minutes
It's
of
all in
it
the
was
editing.
the movie.
Wow.
Showing it the pieces. And it was, Jerry Lewis doesn't have the acting chops. You know, that slapstick doesn't translate. But that made me...
Slapstick clown in a concentration camp? How does that work?
No, Jerry Lewis slapstick.
Oh.
You know Jerry Lewis? He was a
Yeah,
comedian.
I know
he
Jerry
worked,
Lewis, yeah.
Oh, really? That
Yeah,
slapstick
Dean
was-
Martin, yeah.
Yeah. But
They made
what I,
comic books of him.
what I
in
wondered
the
about
50s.
was that the character had a red triangle on his prison uniform. And so I had to look that up. And I found on Wikipedia about
I never saw
the
that.
pink
no.
triangle.
a battalion. No,
It was red, yeah, but that's
that was red
similar,
because
yeah.
there was like black was political prisoners.
Pink
the-
was homosexual.
any deviant.
Yeah, right.
You know, that's what they said. But if you were handicapped or if you're like schizophrenic, they had a different one. But anybody who wasn't a white, straight, blonde-haired guy, you were at the risk of it. Well, there was a battalion made up of the worst of the worst, the ones that had, well, I forgot what the indication was, but every sociopath. These guys were, even by your special forces of World War II said these guys were brutal. I mean, they would come in and shoot you in the face just without even, and that's like talking about what Richard was saying. Do you have awareness? Well, if you're all antisocial, nobody is. And if you're all out to kill, like Bunny and Platoon, he liked being in Vietnam because he said, I get to kill and I get away with it.
You brought up a good point.
And, well, and the
Sociopaths.
Sociopaths.
yeah, the
Yeah.
sociopathy, that's antisocial is the, that, and but Jeffrey Dahmer said, Jeffrey Dahmer, you never forget your first.
But these
Your
are
first hamburger?
yeah. Well, Soylent Green.
That's better than Soylent Red, and it's Tuesday is Soylent Green Day.
Oh.
It is better than Soylent Red. That's why everyone likes it so much.
Oh.
And Soylent White is coming out too.
Well,
Didn't you know that?
I'm confused now. So,
Don't be confused. Soylent Green, the
Richard,
movie, was the
where-
one they had.
Where
Red and white were coming out.
So
Yeah.
what is
No, red was the one. Then green was replaced the red.
So what I see and what you said is that, you know, we in this century, at this time in history, we have been conditioned to think of people as people. You know, if any other time in
Individuals.
history, they called the Europeans, the Greeks and the Persians, they called the Europeans the barbarians. They didn't think of them as on the same level. So they didn't think anything of killing barbarians because they were barbarians. So, and it's like with slavery. It's like the slave owners could have slaves because in their mind they were not fully human. So this is it's a mindset, you know, it's a mindset. And those people are there, you know, they should be applauded for having that humanity because if you've been conditioned out of that humanity, when this war is over, they're going to be dangerous to everybody. Don't you think?
Potentially.
But
after,
I don't.
after the end of World War II, so that was in the 40s, throughout the 50s and even the 60s, every German family had a little policy. Don't talk to Uncle so-and-so about what went on during the war. He's probably in the SS.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, on the flip side, I had a professor in med school who was an old German guy. He was 60-something 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And he said his father joined the SS during World War II, but strictly politically, just to advance in his job. He said he didn't believe in any of it, but that's why he joined the SS. So that,
Well, there's a lot of that going on now.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well,
I don't mean like that. I'm not comparing it to Nazism, but I'm saying a lot of people
Same
are
thing.
agreeing with certain things based on the fact that they want to keep their jobs. You know, I mean,
They're appeasing fascist ideals.
well, we've talked about
Yeah.
this before. The thing is, some of those guys in the House of Representatives, you know, they were butchers. They were, you know, they came from, they worked in a store. They didn't have education, like a lot of education and a job as a lawyer like they do in the Senate. the people in the House of Representatives are normal people.
I think they're in the minority. I think
They're
there's
not
still a
normal at
bunch
all.
of
But
Sociopaths.
But no, the thing I'm saying normal in the sense that all of a sudden they have a staff, they have a car, they have an apartment in D.C., they have access to all kinds of things that they would never have access to in their previous lives. They don't want to lose those jobs. They're afraid to lose those jobs because they want to keep living high. They're not going to be able to live high if they lose this job. They're going to have to go back to their regular life.
Do you know who the only member of the Senate is who doesn't have a bachelor's degree?
I do not.
I'll give you a big hint. He threatened to fight a guy that was Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma. He threatened the UAW guy that go outside.
He's in the Senate?
Yes.
Because it was always my impression that the people in the Senate were better educated.
Well, look at Tommy Potatoeville. The guy was
Tuberville, yeah, idiot.
He's a potato. He is going to run for governor of Alabama.
Oh, God.
Alabama.
Because he's dumb enough. He's America's most famous gym teacher. But if you have recognition, that's how he ran. He could never get elected in any state where they're literate because he's an idiot. He's a dyed-in-the-wool idiot.
Well, you know what? You have to be careful because Alabama has Birmingham University, and there's smart people in Alabama, but the problem being is that it's not, education it's not really. Nobody really looks at education like a good thing anymore anyway.
Yeah,
no matter
and you know
where
what the smartest people at UAB do? They leave.
I don't know about that, but I mean, that's where I did my field study when I was in school. I went to Alabama, and yes, when I took some walks away from the beaten path, I met some interesting people who I wouldn't really want to get to know any better. But the fact of the matter is, the people that I worked with on this archaeological dig were brilliant, and they were from Alabama.
What were you digging up there? A pyramid?
No, we were digging up human remains. It was a cave.
Ooh. What were you going to do with the remains?
Well,
why were you doing this?
Because it was going to be the dust cave where we were digging. It was on a slough, and the slough was going to be inundated by the Tennessee Water Authority, and so it was contract archaeology, but they gave it to the university so it would be done right. And there were Paleo Indians that had lived in that cave, so we were digging up all of the remains that were in the cave. There were fire pits. There were animal bones. There were human bones.
I got a funny story about that.
and it was fascinating, and the people, well, not all of them were from Alabama, but there was a big contingent from the university, and these were really brilliant people. But so there's smart people every place,
back
and there's
then,
stupid
people were
every
smarter
place
back
too.
then too, in general.
Well,
no, actually,
this
they
was
weren't.
in the 90s.
You think so?
I like your point. Don't stereotype the people of Alabama.
Yeah, I don't.
Well-
I don't, because I do know.
Well, if the majority, you would have to
Yeah.
consider the majority of the population what it's composed of, and that's probably
Because I said when I
What
lived
are
in
we
South
talking about?
Carolina, we should have a Go Mississippi plate, because if it wasn't for Mississippi, South Carolina would have been number 50. And so, I mean, when it's
Not if Arkansas has anything to say about it.
yeah.
well, but the north side of Arkansas is Missouri.
He has relatives in South Carolina
Well, I
And
was
Arkansas.
licensed.
and Arkansas.
The north side of Arkansas is just the Nazis in Missouri.
you just got a whole contingent there of.
Where in South Carolina?
Northwest corner.
Yeah, that's where I lived. Where? Name the communities. Do you know?
Greenwood, Greenville, Anderson.
I lived in Greenville, and Greenwood is to the south of us. We had a doctor that interviewed with us, and
Southeast.
Anderson. Anderson had a USC campus, so
West.
and well,
James, how do the people of South Carolina look upon themselves based on what you've interacted with people and heard?
Most of them that I've met have a self-concept out of a Bruce Springsteen song.
Darlington County.
which one?
We drive our truck. We live in the house that our great-great-grandfather built with his own hands. And we don't take too kindly to these new carpetbaggers coming here and talking about zoning laws.
Yeah, so the idea of education is not. I remember my stepfather, who grew up in Pennsylvania. He said to me one time he didn't finish high school, and I asked him why, and he said because I was strong enough as a junior to do a man's job.
Mm-hmm.
And
Probably
that's what,
smart.
And
to
that's
do
what.
that.
And that's what my but that's what his mother said. You're big boy, strong, work.
Well, the
My
good thing about
uncle-
work is you get paid for it. If you go to school, you don't.
Yeah, but I am a.
No, but you go to school, you get a better job. You get
Not
paid a lot
anymore.
better. I'm
No,
telling
you
you, I
get-
live
No,
there.
you
I'm
said
All
telling
you get
you.
is student loan debt that you can never pay
I
off.
did
That's
not.
the reality.
I didn't get my bachelor degree till
Degrees are worthless now.
In the '90s, I got my bachelor's
They've
degree,
been
and
worthless
my
for a long time.
my
Yeah, true. Yep.
my
How long, though?
income doubled.
At least since the 90s.
I worked for the state, and my income doubled. I went from making
And what year?
I got my degree in 1999.
Okay.
My income doubled. I
But
went from
state
making.
jobs are gatekeeper situations.
I went
And they're
from
rare.
making almost $30,000 to like $55,000.
And in South Carolina, in the Northwest, there's Michelin and there's BMW, and they prefer a 2-year degree. So it's not you make more money. They won't take you just because you're bulky. You know that they want a little bit of education. You don't have to
It
have a
depends on the
PhD.
You gotta be
job.
able to
I'm
do
telling
math.
you, go
Yeah.
apply to Michelin or go apply to BMW.
Why
and
would
see,
I do that? I don't live there.
Because you need a job.
But I don't live there, so I couldn't apply.
No, but that's not the
See,
yeah.
your literalism detracts from your point.
Yeah. Okay.
My
so-
uncle in Arkansas said that he lived on the land that our family owned for, back since sharecropping, and he did a whole lot to make sure that he could send his children to college
Good for
because he
him.
wanted them to be better.
Oh, thank God. Somebody thinks like that.
And then he said, the biggest mistake I ever made, because they thought that they were taking coursework in farming,
Oh.
and these people taught them all kinds of stupid stuff
Yeah, like what?
and came home thinking that I was an idiot who didn't know how to farm. But they were being taught to do factory farming, which made them tools of the system who were locked into this factory farming paradigm and knew nothing about things like saving seeds and rotating your crops and how to plant complementary things, which of course meant that you had to harvest by hand.
Yeah.
The college taught them monocrop farming, which means you completely deplete the soil.
And then you
Yes.
put the
Machines.
stuff
Yeah.
back in.
Yeah,
the
then you buy
chemicals.
stuff.
You put the chemicals
From
back
Monsanto.
into the. Yeah. Well, from there are more small farmers now that are looking at
They're growing marijuana.
well, but there are more small farmers now that are growing
Growing
crops
poppies.
differently.
Poppies won't grow in the U.S. generally.
They do in Hawaii.
There's little.
My friend
intri-
grew them.
They're not. But what do you mean though? There's a different kind of poppy.
No, the opium poppy just won't.
Oh, I don't know what an opium poppy looks like.
It looks like any other poppy. That's
Well,
the whole
It's a
point.
red flower.
If you get poppy seeds on your bagel, you'll test positive.
Yeah,
you get
I
a
know.
whiz quiz.
I know
That's
about
right.
that. Isn't
Yeah,
that funny?
so they're all related.
But my daughter, I mean, there's poppies. You can grow poppies, but you can't grow.
Why do they wear
fields
those
of
poppy
poppies? Is
pins
that-
for Veterans Day? You know, those little pins of like
That's
poppies.
a
What's it-
California. That's a California poppy. And
Yo,
it
what's that have to
means-
do with opium?
That doesn't have anything to do with opium.
So why do they
it has
wear
to
it?
do with remembrance.
Well, how? But poppy, you think opium?
Yeah, but it's
so
not.
what's
it's
opium
not-
have to do with
it's
because
not
of
the
the
same
same
kind of
because
poppy.
because
It's a
you don't get
It's
it.
a California poppy. It's
So
different.
what's
It's
it?
smaller.
Okay, so what's the meaning then?
It's from the poem
remembrance.
Flanders Field. They mention poppies, red poppies.
And it's the
Is it a
flower
poem about
means
tripping?
remembrance.
no, it's about war and dying in war.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. We got 11 minutes left here. Let's salvage some of this.
is
Okay.
great.
So we were talking about are we do we finish? Do we go over that whole thing about what we think? If there's good and evil embedded into our brain, I mean,
That's a binary.
I don't.
We're on a spectrum,
Yeah.
so good and evil is black and
Yeah,
white.
I don't
Coke
really
and Pepsi.
think-
There's not. That's not real.
Yeah, I don't
That's
think.
something that you're
In-
culturally.
In my estimation,
made to
I
think.
think that it's something we learn.
Yeah,
So-
I don't believe in good and evil because there's some degree of good and evil in everything.
Yeah.
Nothing is completely good or completely evil. There's always like nothing's black or white. Everything's on the gray scale.
The example is Pitcairn Island. Everybody there speaks with a British accent because all descended from the one guy who survived from the bounty that got embedded there. When your culture, if you had two antisocial people and they bred the whole island, everybody is going to have a different morality. They're not going to have that intrinsic "I shouldn't kill" because
Right.
and then that's your culture. Mm-hmm. I mean, and your culture is we can kill everybody. We don't care about it. We have no laws, and it's survival of the fittest.
Yeah, I do think though there might be something.
That's idealism.
There might be something if of watching somebody suffer. I don't know if that's.
Depends on the person. Some people enjoy it.
I know
some people are repelled
some
by
people are sociopaths, but I think if you're
It's a very low
if you
percentage.
have a normal brain.
What's normal?
Well, if you have a healthy brain,
That's better.
then you don't want to inflict pain. You know, I can see that, but I still think that most of this the rules and the regulations are not inborn but learned. So, do you have any other thing on your list?
Latest New York Supreme Court case. Federal Supreme Court case.
Okay.
An Ohio woman named Marlene Ames alleged her employer denied her a promotion and demoted her because she was straight.
Oh, that one.
Now, she went to the Supreme Court of the
Oh,
land.
come on.
She won.
And she claimed that both the promotion she applied for and the role that she was booted from were given to unqualified gay people instead of her.
That sounds like such a setup.
No, it
The
isn't.
Supreme Court ruled in her
saw that
favor.
story.
She can now pursue her discrimination lawsuit.
Because lower
Yes.
court said she could because the law had said if you're in a majority position, you can't be discriminated against.
The Republican Party is planting these cases into Supreme Court to get
Yeah,
decisions
the think
they're
tanks put
looking
them
for.
there. Yeah.
They're looking for these decisions so that they can for their agenda.
Right.
So what do you think about this?
I think it's worth discussing.
Okay.
Namely, if 90% of the people can be classified a certain way and 10% are classified a different way, is it true that they both should have the same rights?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
To
think
me,
Absolutely.
To me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. To me, it's yes. They're still people. That's the defining issue.
Yeah.
The people part.
Yeah.
On that note, one of the Supreme Court justices who overturned the lower court's decision noted, I don't know if it was Gorsuch, but it's noted, what is a minority anymore? Is a straight white woman the minority? You know?
And
What
Not
is?
yet.
Yeah. It's not 90-10 anymore.
Yeah.
The numbers are a little.
well, when
I'm not sure. There is a.
I texted that to Richard today that when you get any group together, they will denigrate other groups. So if you get a group of homosexuals together, they will talk about the breeders being people that are straight or that have kids. They speak derogatorily about them.
That's kind of a.
do.
I'm just saying that's
Kind of a human. It is kind of a human thing. It's like peer pressure. Peer pressure has been used throughout.
Oh, yeah.
Throughout.
You gotta fit into the group.
millennium, in order
Get in,
to
loser.
get people to behave the way the group thinks you should behave. So I mean, not everybody had the same rules. There were some groups where the homosexuality was just normal, and it wasn't even a thing. They'd act if somebody cooked a side of beef and didn't invite the whole town. That would be oh my God, we're going to ostracize them because they didn't share with us. But that peer pressure is that's something that's probably in our brains. that we were born with. But
No, I don't know if you're born with it.
yeah, but
More
a lot of
conditioned to it.
a lot of tribes.
There's always
will-
the in group and the out group.
Yeah, they will make you leave the community, and that's a big deal because when you're in a small situation like that, or in the past, there is no other world except your small circle. So you have to leave there, and you have to try to fit in with another group that's maybe 20 miles away, and you got to walk there, and then.
Well,
so
if take Hawaiians and Germans. Hawaiians will let everybody in the line. Germans will take every opportunity. So you'll get to the extreme situation where the Hawaiians waiting and all the Germans are going through here because their culture. Have you ever been in line with a German woman behind you?
I don't know.
You would know it because the cart would be bumping into you, even though you're the only two people in line.
But do you mean like an actual German or a German American?
No, an actual German. That's
Oh,
what I'm
no,
saying.
I've never been to
that's,
Germany.
That's the cultural thing,
Yeah.
always pushing, whereas the Hawaiians will let everybody in.
Yeah.
What's the one thing people in New York City can't do? They can't merge. Everybody merges in Hawaii. But New York City, they can't merge. They do everything else.
Yeah.
But they can't merge on the 278.
Put them into the wall.
and that's what it is. But the Hawaiians don't have those problems.
Yeah. So there's all these cultural differences, but
And so I think it's all culture born because the intrinsic right and wrong, you don't know what it is. Like I use the example from Star Trek about the alien culture where they have multiple wives and multiple husbands and everybody's good with it because that's what they do.
right, it's there.
And we would say, oh, that's wrong. But you know what? What if we didn't have to sleep?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like
That'd make us work more.
the indigenous people of the North, they have something they call if you're a guest in somebody's house, you're offered their wife, and what they say.
The North, you mean like Inuit?
Yeah.
In Yupik and
so they say
at the basket.
They say, "Would you like to laugh with my wife?" They don't say, "Would you like to screw my wife?" They say, "Would you like to laugh with my wife?" And it's offered, and you can either do it or not. But it's like a thing.
What a bad
It's
guy.
okay.
What's funny though is sex and golf are two things you can enjoy doing without laughing.
Well, depends. I mean, I guess you could, but laughing with your wife. I mean, that's a nice way of putting it, isn't it? Would you like to laugh with my wife?
It's poetic.
It's close to lay, so
Yeah. It's not in English. They don't
Laugh
say
when you
it
do
in
watch
English.
comedy movies.
what?
Watch some videotapes of
They,
comedy.
they
and
enjoy
laugh.
each other. They enjoy each other. That's so we have a whole big world, and there's all the different pockets of normal. So there's no normal across the board. And the same thing with I remember when we were. Remember you went to Catholic grade school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember buying pagan babies?
Yeah, I do.
Wait,
Any of you have that in your experience?
No, that was before my time.
So we would give our nickel milk money. They would ask you for it, and my mother would have been pissed if she knew I was giving them my nickel for milk.
Yeah.
And I would give that to them, and I thought, okay, these poor children, they don't have Barbie dolls, and they don't have regular clothes like we have.
Oh, they
have,
did that. Yeah, they
and-
didn't call it pagan babies. Though.
Well, because it's probably something more politically correct.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it to me, it seemed like we were giving them a better life, but we weren't. We were interfering with what they think is normal.
Well, that's the survival of the fittest because the cultures die out that can't survive.
Yeah, well, I just remember thinking how wonderful we were to buy these
And
pagan babies.
Now it's
And now it's
condescendingly, yeah.
like, oh my God, what did we do? And so,
Well, that's like the white is right. And I've said the European culture has its end already in it. But your Pacific cultures, your Native American cultures can last forever. They can last forever. But the European culture has its end right from the beginning. Because you follow the example of the Greeks, who rose and failed. Romans rose and failed. The Austro-Hungarian Empire rose and failed. Ottomans rose and failed.
You get too big, right? You just get too big, and you can't control it anymore. That's what happened to the Roman Empire. It just got too unwieldy and too big.
It got too corrupt, and that's why they got sacked multiple times by the vandals.
Corruption is something that we have. we want more.
Wherever there's government, there will be corruption.
Well, not only government, but people think, can I get away with this? Can I get away with that? We're more like weasels than.
Well, what is there to get away with?
Well,
it's all based on laws.
Well, if you're anarchic, there's nothing to get away with because there's nothing legal.
Right.
I still don't. I'm not going in that place. Okay, so we got 43 seconds, and does anybody have anything to say that we haven't said yet?
Okay, my two quick stories. First, at my local meat cutter.
Real quick, yeah.
Yeah, let me say it.
Yeah.
I asked if he ever cuts himself. He said no, and we never talk about that. The other was there's a cemetery near where I live, and I asked the caretaker, who doesn't strike me as a really intelligent guy, nice guy, but if they ever find bones, he said, they're always animal bones. Because if they're animal bones, they can just get rid of them. If they're human bones, they got to reinter them and do a big thing. So they're always animal bones.
Always, yeah.
Humans are animals, so.
No, that's...
Yeah, we're made out of meat.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your participating. It's good to see you. And here we are, and I'm taking my headset off.